Oye, mi gente, now, you know, pero let me tell you, if there's one thing we love, it's when local kids do good. And at this point, you know, really broadcast journalism has really shown a lot of us local kids, doing hella good. And, this is our third, I think, guest who's on a national news journalism platform. At this point, I think we're kind of collecting y'all like Pokemon. Really, it's a very strange hobby we've got going, but we have direct from GMA weekend. We have with us today Gio Benitez. Thank you so much for joining us, man.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Yeah, that's actually the first thing because I was just listening to your podcast with Boris Sanchez. He's my buddy, and I was just like, wait a minute, this guy's just collecting all these Cubanitos who are on TV now.
It is, and the thing is that when you guys evolve, it's much more powerful than a Pikachu. It's just way more powerful. Yeah, we've had Boris on twice now. You and Tom Yamas.
Oh, amazing, Tom, another buddy. Yep.
Yeah. So again, it's we're collecting Miami journalists that have made it big time, as the kids say. But I want to talk to you about so many things, and obviously, I know you're a very busy guy. But let's start off with at the time of this recording, yesterday was the New York Pride in the whole parade, the whole celebration, and you were one of the co-hosts of the ABC. I'm going to massacre this, so please feel free to step in and correct me. The ABC News live stream that was also on Hulu, but it was also on the local affiliates in certain markets. And I think it covered the Pride parades in New York, Chicago, and San Francisco.
Okay, you got that all right, so I don't know why you were worried.
All right, because I'm a worrier. That's what happens when you're the child of immigrants.
Listen, I feel like that's in our DNA.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Like, as a Cubanito, you just worry about everything.
You're like, am I gonna say irregardless? And then you just screw it all up. I have so many questions. First of all, how does it feel to not hear a remix today at all? As you woke up versus after 5 hours of just unce, 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 unce. And
Oh my gosh, it was amazing because first of all, I had never actually watched the entire march before in
okay.
New York City. So I was able to watch the entire thing from start to finish. So that was really cool. So that was just like a real benefit of being able to be there on the sidelines, with all of our ABC cameras and all that. And it was so incredible to see how many people came out from
Yeah.
all different walks of life and all these organizations you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're seeing them with this platform. There was this one group that really got me, and it's called Sage, and it was a group that focuses
Yep.
on advocacy for LGBTQ plus elders, and they were literally rolling down the street in their wheelchairs. And I just thought that was so special that here they are after all they went through in their own history, and still in this march, making sure that their voices were heard. It
Talk
was really
about
beautiful.
we're here, we're queer, get used to it. They probably pioneered that phrase, and it's great that you talk about Sage because they're actually they're an organization that's near and dear to my heart as well because something I do think about many times when we're talking about the bigger scope of representation, right? It's you and I can relate in the sense of representation on two levels, the Cuban American, the Latinidad, all of that, but then there is the gay level, right? The queer level. Again, I don't know what the kids are using today, so I'm going to cover all my bases with all the words. But to see, for me specifically, to see Sage and that generation show up and be represented, it really does pull at the heartstrings because I'm sure you've heard this many times over. The gay community really did lose an entire generation, for the most part, and so it's not even a matter for me of well, they weren't on TV. It's like no, even when they were being represented, now it had to be represented almost starting from scratch, right? Like a whole younger generation. And I'm going to flip it on you, sir. How does it feel to be one of those people who's leading that representation pack, now across the board for, again, Guanitos and, and the LGBTQ plus community?
Oh man, thank you for that. It's I don't take it for granted because I hear from kids, I hear from parents of kids, and I see their messages, and I see from messages from folks who didn't have this kind of opportunity in the past. And I think back to when I first started in television and I was working in local news, and I really thought that this part of me, this side of me, was going to be what held me back.
Right.
And instead, here I am with this organization at ABC News that is lifting it up in such a prominent way. I mean, not only did we do these 5 hours of coverage,
And this was the first time they had ever done that, right? Like
first time.
that
This is
coverage.
the
Yeah.
first time, and we've done some live streams before, never quite in this way, and certainly not profiling all of the different marches that were happening at the same time across the country. So that was just unprecedented to do. But the fact that we've also done the very first primetime special on the ABC network, specifically on Pride last year, and that's where I interviewed Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary. So it's really powerful and moving to me that this one thing that I thought would hold me back is something that has really been highlighted by ABC News as something that is important and special and should be out there in the public eye. And it's wild to think of like little Gio, down there in Miami and all of that, thinking about these things and then seeing this play out years later.
Yeah, and with you at the forefront of it, right? Like, something you couldn't even imagine happening. Like let's broaden the scope, right? And then it's like, oh, not is it only happening, but I get to play in this space. I get to have fun and show people the exposure that is needed, especially nowadays, to continue that awareness and bringing that message. And so, dude, I'm just gonna say it as a fellow gay Cuban kid from Westchester. Thank you for that. I mean, since we don't have Westchester Pride, I think you should be the Grand Marshal at Miami Beach Pride next year. I'm gonna start that petition.
What do we think? Down, hey, where should that go?
So I'm thinking, okay, well, no, espérate. Ahora sí, now we're going down a rabbit hole here. So it's got to start like right off of Coral Way next to the expressway, right? Like right next to Cow Bakery. It's got to go all the way to La 117, come down, cross La 87 on Bird Road, and it has to end at Tropical Park. Like there's just
all roads end at Tropical Park.
Absolutely. I mean, it could technically start there as a staging and then just go up a little bit, like 40, go around 80 Barnes Park, the whole spiel. Look, you and I will talk later. We're gonna put this proposal together. It'll just be, it'll be a small parade because it's gonna be you, me, and Martha of Miami. But that's okay. That works as a parade. That works. So now that we're talking about Westchester, you grew up in the same area that I did, so that's why I feel a certain kinship to you. I've never met you before today, but I do feel certain, like we've said this before on the podcast whenever we interviewed other people from Westchester. It's like I don't know you, but I know you, right? Like we probably grew up very similar, especially since you went to my high school rival, Coral Park. I went.
Wait, where'd you go?
Oh, well, I said rival. Where do you think I went?
Okay, so I'm gonna say Sunset.
No, Southwest.
No. Southwest?
Southwest, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my next guess.
Yeah, I mean, and for listeners who aren't from the area, the main reason that we were rivals specifically in football is because we always had the worst football teams. So in the city, so when one of our teams beat the other one, it was like, we don't suck as bad as you do. Tell me I'm wrong, Gio. Tell me I'm wrong.
I mean, look, I love my Rams. My Golden Rams.
But you graduated from Coral Park and then you went to FIU, where you didn't study journalism. You studied sociology.
Yeah.
And I just saw you this past weekend on GMA Weekend talking about your love of Indiana Jones and archaeology, and so your mind was not even anywhere in this category, in this industry, right? I mean, at least going into college.
Well, so here's the real reason that happened is because I got this amazing opportunity with a scholarship program. It's called the Emma Bowen Foundation, and basically they help minorities get opportunities at TV stations and media companies all across this country. And so I did that in Miami at Channel 4 in Miami. So I was 17 years old when I started that. And I knew I wanted to do television news, but my mentors there were telling me, listen, you are getting your training here. This is essentially your school right now because you're 17 years old. And so I listened to them and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to look for other things. And I found sociology and anthropology with an emphasis on religious studies. I also did some English classes as well, literature classes, things like that. And so that was really my focus. And what I realized is that studying sociology, learning how to communicate with people and how to ask questions and ask questions fairly, all of these things that I wouldn't necessarily always think about at the time as being interconnected with journalism. I have used that so much ever since. And so it's so funny when we were talking about Indiana Jones, because I'm like, okay, anthropology, I've got this, and I was obsessed with all of that, and I still am.
That little boy doesn't go away ever.
No,
Yeah.
never.
It's funny you mentioned FOR, because I'm trying to do the math in my head, and my listeners know that I don't do math, so it's going to be a dangerous endeavor to begin with. But I'm wondering if you were there also. A very good friend of mine was a producer at FOR, probably around that same time. Ozzy Martinez.
Oh my God, I love Ozzy.
Yeah, I've known Ozzy since high school. Yeah, we've grown up together. Yeah.
I was a writer I was there. I started as a writer basically, and I thought that I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, I'm horrible at this. And Ozzy was my first DP.
Oh.
And so I was working as the voiceover. We call them VOs when we have like a 20-second or 30-second update on a story that you have the anchor read. That's what I was writing. And I was just so bad at it because Ozzy was always rewriting this. And I was saying to him, I'm like, dude, am I that bad? Like, should I just quit it? And he says, no. I want you to just learn, compare what you did and compare it to what I did. And he really taught me a lot that way.
Yeah, and if it makes you feel any better, I mean, he rewrites my text messages back to me. It's just who he is. It's just his nature, you know. He's just one of my favorite people in the world, actually. Yeah, just saw him this past weekend.
He's awesome.
Yeah. So you're at FIU, you're getting your exposure at FOR, and then what's that next step, right? Because you've been at ABC for a while now, but there's that in between, right, where you're like, okay, it's time to leave that Cuban nest, and that if it was up to our parents, we could stay there till we're 95.
Oh gosh, telling Abuela, that was the hardest part about leaving Miami. It wasn't even my mom. Like, my mom was like, go. I get it. Like, I get it. This is huge. But Abuela, she was like, pero no quieres vivir aquí.
Pero sí,
Don't you miss Miami?
I lived in New York for a couple years. I moved up there. My background's in marketing. And I, to this day, will say, I know for a fact that my grandfather went to his grave not understanding why I had to leave Miami to go to New York to do the same thing I was doing here. Like, I know he was kind of like, bueno, okay, está bien, para tu bien, blah, blah. But I know in his mind, he didn't, I get it. I know he had no idea why I would need to do that. So I can relate to that 1,000%.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part, right? Because you know that when you make that decision, there's limited time, right?
Yeah,
there's limited time left. And so, oh gosh, I don't want this to get emotional about abuelos and abuelas, because that's
what we do
here.
That's what we do here.
It's so... It's such a powerful part of our story because they represent all of this hope. And every time I think about this country, I think about that hope and the way they saw it and through that lens, and how they came to this country, just thinking about us without knowing us yet, because we weren't even born, right? But they were thinking about us no matter what, and it was just, it's so special.
Okay, you're gonna make me cry now. Like, and I brought it up. And you're gonna make me cry. Like, so where was the first stop on, when you decided to leave Miami? Was it straight to New York, or were there little, local affiliates along the way?
So I had a different path. I started out as a producer, and I started out right out of college. I started as an investigative producer there in Miami. And it was I always wanted to be a reporter, but here I was at 22. I guess I was 22 when I graduated. And I was presented with this incredible opportunity to be the investigative producer, inside like a dark van, shooting video and hitting camera video and, all of these things. And I just knew that I could learn so much from it. And I think like 6 months in, I remember I went to my boss and I said, is there any chance I could start as a reporter in Miami? And she was like, not a chance. It's not going to happen. And I'm like, got it. I'm not delusional. Will you help me, get to another market? She says, just give it a chance, okay? You've been in this job for like 6 months. Like, relax just a little bit. And so I said, fine. 6 months later, I lost my iPhone. And that is how everything changed for me. I lose my iPhone, and I was on vacation. I get back to Miami, so upset. I mean, I was making so little money at the time, and here's another huge expense with a phone. And I go to the Apple store, and I buy this new phone, and they never even say this. They always keep new phones and stuff, very hush hush. And they said, I think that there's a new phone coming out. So why don't you just wait? And I said, no. I need the phone. I need the phone. Very urgent. So I get the phone. The very next day, Steve Jobs announces the first iPhone with video. It's the iPhone 3GS. And this is what sets into motion everything else for me. So the last day that I could return the phone I had just bought was the first day the new one was coming out. So if I wanted to exchange it, I had to be standing in that line at 4:00 in the morning. So now I'm in this line and I'm messaging with that same boss who told me I could never start in Miami on the air. And I said, I can't believe I'm standing in line. And she calls me and she says, when you get your phone, you think you can shoot some video? Because all of our photographers are being kicked off property. And then I said, yeah. And then she calls me back. She says, why don't you do a whole story? Like, you think you can do it? You want to shoot a whole story with it? I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I'm like freaking out and I have no idea. So I get the phone. The wrapper is still on it. I start doing these interviews all over the place. And I do a little selfie stand-up, recording myself. Wasn't shaven. Like, I look like a hot mess.
4 a.m. Of course you looked like a hot mess. Yeah.
Right? And so I go back, because I'm a producer, I know how to edit. I know how to do all these things. So I go back to the station. I record my voice in the Voice Memos app. And I put it through Final Cut Pro. I edit the whole thing. And it airs in our 5:30 newscast. All of a sudden, what we did, it was just a story about the lines for the iPhone in Miami. I was at the Falls. But it turns out that it was the first time a phone had ever been used anywhere in the world for broadcast television. And so we had made history, television history around the world, and everybody else was telling that story. They were writing articles about us in China and South America and Europe, like all over the place, about this little iPhone that could. And that all of a sudden just set things into motion. And my boss said, okay, I guess you can tell a story.
Right.
Let's do another one next week and the next week. And then it just snowballed. You want to be the weekend reporter, half producer? Great. And then 6 months after that, I started as a reporter. So it all started in a very public way. And about a year in, I get a Facebook follow from, the talent executive at ABC. And, I don't do anything. And I get a message saying, hey, send me your stuff. And, we just start sort of communicating and things like that. And I end up in New York and I said, I'm going to be in New York and, maybe I can drop in. And, we set up little courtesy meetings and things like that. We just started forming a relationship. And I always tell young people, it's so important to start forming relationships. This is not just like sending an email or putting an application in, And that's how it all happened. And when the time came that my contract was up in Miami, I got this incredible opportunity to be a correspondent at ABC News, and that's when the adventure started, crisscrossing the world and telling stories I never imagined telling.
That is insane. That is insane. The trajectory of it all. And I mean, obviously, the moral of the story is never ever tell the child of immigrants to wait, because we're not gonna. We're not gonna. We're gonna look for that opportunity wherever the hell it may show up. But that's insanely fantastic to me that you went, from a big market, right? Because I mean, Miami is one of the biggest DMAs, to ABC, right? Like it was just. I mean, hell, your initiative is something to be envied and proud of, man. Congrats on that alone.
Thank you. And when I got this incredible promotion that I'm just so grateful for at GMA, one of the things I brought with me was my Abuelos pocket watch. Because I wanted to make sure that there was a piece of that with me on this set that carries this beautiful name that quite literally bears the name of the country that gave them so much hope. Yeah. And so I don't forget that the entire time.
Yeah. And again, number one, that's absolutely beautiful. I will tell you this, he's inside of you. You know what I mean? He's in your heart. Both of, I don't know if your abuela is still with us or if she's passed.
Yeah, we just lost her last year. So.
I'm so sorry. My grandmother passed just a few months back. She was the last of my grandparents as well. So I feel you. We're
an amazing generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Generation. I mean, to show up here, as they say, con una mano adelante y la otra atrás, and and here we are, right, as a result of that. You bring that up, and I was looking for this video online, and I'm pretty sure it was you. So correct me if I'm wrong, because if
it's Boris Sanchez,
no. It is not Boris Sanchez because nobody can match those thick ass eyebrows. That's so it's not Boris. I will tell you that much. It might be Tom. That's the reason I'm saying it, because it might have been when Tom was at ABC, but I feel like it was you. Sitting at that anchor desk, and I forget what exactly, what time or what was going on, but I think it was around the 2020 election, or it was during that tumultuous period. And you speaking with that same degree of emotion that you just shared with me right now about, your parents coming to this country. And I remember it was one of those moments where I was just flipping through channels, right? I just happened to stop and I'm like, okay, well, it's a pandemic. I'm not going anywhere. And there you were, and watching you speak about your family and your parents, and you started to get choked up. It hit me. It really, really hit me, man. Like in all the feels. And that's one of the reasons I said earlier, it's like, I don't know you, but I know you. I feel like we get each other. I could see you at our betters. It's yep, that you're that guy. And honestly, I can't love that anymore, bro.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I want to bring up, because I know you've done a lot with ABC, and they've been fantastic, to work with. I mean, looking at your career and your trajectory, you did host, I think it was one episode or maybe a few, because again, I got a lot of this from Wikipedia, which, as you know, as a reporter, not always the most reliable source. All right. So please correct me if I go.
I haven't checked that entry, so I have no idea what's out there.
Okay. Well, so then that means it's not you doing it. So that's good. You hosted a segment of the ABC show, What Would You Do?
Oh, that was fun. Yeah.
Or as I like to call it, El Show de los Chismosos. Because, and so I want to say, because I watched that show and I'm always like, I don't know if I'd be that person, right? I don't know if I would. I like to think in my head that I would speak up and say something, but I don't know if I would be that person, right? And so how did you feel going into that episode? Because that show fascinates me. Did you walk in there saying something similar, where it's just like, oh, I would totally speak up, and then as you're kind of going through it, you're like, well, I don't know if I would, or maybe like this or not like that. What was that whole experience like?
Well, what I was thinking about the entire time is, because what people don't realize that John Quinones is also involved in is that, who, by the way, is like the ultimate Latino journalist. I'm just so honored that I get to work with this guy and call him a friend. But people don't realize that after he does these things and shoots this, he then has to go to these people and ask them for permission to use it. Right. Yeah. So it's not this like, okay, so you got it on tape, you're good to go. And that was what I was really concerned about and thinking about, was like, okay, so I'm going to get it. We're going to get this on tape. And now we have to convince these people to let us use it.
Wow.
And that was a huge part of the workload. So that was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of fun to see why people were choosing to speak out in different ways. And those stories were very, very powerful, because in some, what you don't realize is, and that's, I always want, and one of the things I love that you do is that you're so compassionate toward other thoughts. And that was one of the things where you wondered, okay, well, why? And it's almost always connected to something that happened in their own past and story. And I thought that was so powerful, because that ended up, there were so many other stories to tell just from that. And asking them, why did you speak out? And you hear that something similar happened to them, or they know somebody in their family, or something like that. You know what I mean? And I think that's so important. And so I like how much compassion that show makes you feel, in the same way that, you make us feel when you're doing these podcasts.
Oh, well, thank you for that. See, that's two now, because before we started, now you're compassionate, and you also said I'm in my 30s. So you're officially, I mean, we've had Boris on twice, but now you're my favorite journalist.
Yes.
He's never said I look young. He's never given me any compliments like that. So you know what? Pa carajo con Boris. No, I love you, Boris. I love you, Boris. I'm just teasing. I'm totally going to get a text message when he hears this, by the way. He's going to shoot me. It'll be like, bro, what the hell? So I have to ask the question because we've been chatting now for about half an hour, give or take. And I have found that when I am talking to fellow Miamians who have left, who have tamped down the accent, eventually it comes back up, and I have not yet heard it. So what kind of Herculean strength, sir, do you have that you have not lapsed into the Miami accent? Because that if that's not on your special skills, your resume, like it should be.
So Spanish was my first language.
Yep.
I lived in, as so many of us did, in a multi-generational home. And my mom, when I was growing up, she decided to put me in. I grew up in Hialeah, by the way.
Oh.
So we eventually migrated to Westchester, but I grew up in Hialeah. I know that there's the little war. I heard Boris talking about that. So I'm a product of both.
I like it. You're bridging the gap for me and Boris. That's what you're doing. You are, yes.
And so she found this like small little private school, and I don't know, it was like $50 a week or something like that. And she worked 2 jobs to put me through it, and that is how I learned my English, because todo eran americano. Everybody, all the teachers. And that's how I learned my English. And I became obsessed. I was like a spelling bee champion at the school. I became obsessed with grammar and pronunciation. You should see me before the show. I'm literally, if there is a town that I can't pronounce or that I'm unsure of, I'm going to call a local bakery in that town or a law firm or something to figure out exactly how it's said. And then I want to hear how the locals say it versus how everybody else. And I want to see, and make a decision on which one to use and why. And so much of my time is spent on pronunciation before we do Good Morning America.
I want that behind the scenes video. Like that's got to be some type of Patreon exclusive, content of you just calling random bakeries in Massapequa or something,
Right, exactly. Libraries are very good.
Okay, good. See, and this is, we like to say on our show, listen, laugh, and learn. So that's the learn portion. That's, if you're going to try to find out how to pronounce a small town libraries, call the libraries.
Yeah.
Dude, I am having such a ball chatting with you. Like, honestly, I'm not, you can't fake the funk. I mean, I'm nowhere near as good at this interview stuff as you are. So if I was having,
no, you're great.
I would, if I was
the fact that we're just having a conversation, that's what's most important, right? There's this connection, and that's the most important in any interview or conversation.
Yeah. See, and now I'm gonna have to just watch you every Saturday and Sunday on GMA weekend. It's funny because we. Myself and my co-host, we also, because we are not busy enough, we also have a side hustle of the side hustle, as we say, called Pim Pam Pollo. So we do pop-ups for chicken wings every Saturday and Sunday. And so I'm always up early, but then I always go to his house while we're like getting everything ready, blah, blah. So you kind of have become part of the weekend ritual. Like we will put on GMA weekend while he's making, the sauces for our guayaba y queso wings. And I'm,
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. Stop, you're making me hungry. What? Guayaba y queso wings?
Guayaba y queso wings, bro. Yeah. Next time you're going to be in Miami, like let me know.
Okay.
And I will hook it up.
These wings.
I will hook it up. And listen, you can have as many as you want because I know your husband is like all about fitness. So I know, first of all, it's chicken. Chicken's healthy, even though it's double fried. But chicken is, it's healthier. Guava's a fruit, so that's got to count for something.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, okay, so it's dairy. So it's like, and we bread it. So it's really the 4 food groups we're giving you right off the bat. There's no denying that at all.
I love that. By the way, you mentioned him. This is his setup. This podcast setup is his because he's launching a new podcast this week.
Plug it.
So, yeah.
Plug it. What's it going to be called?
Oh, okay. It's called I've Never Said This Before with Tommy D'Addario. And the folks at iHeartMedia are behind it. And he has all these fascinating conversations. And I get to, I get to cheat and use this microphone and all this nice equipment to make this sound really good. Because and it sounds like we're right next to each other in the studio.
It's crazy, right? Like to think, just even a couple of years back, you tried to do this and it was like, and now it's like, yeah, you're in New York, I'm in Miami, and total, it's like we're in the next room.
Yep.
Bueno, Gio, I I've had a blast chatting with you, man, honestly. And I don't keep you on longer because I know that you've got a crap ton of stuff to do. You know, a man's work is never done. And when it's a gay man's work, it just means you do it to a thumping beat in your headphones.
Yep.
But it's been fantastic chatting with you, honestly. I've loved getting to just meet you and get to know you, and keep making us proud, man. Like on every single level. I mean, I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. I'm being completely upfront. You make us proud. You wear your Cubanity, to borrow from Martha Darby from My Big Fat Cuban Family. You wear it so proudly and so upfront. And honestly, bro, we couldn't ask for a better representation, for Cuban Americans, LGBT, Latinos, all of it. You just do it with dignity and style. And thank you so much for that, brother.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I think, as my abuelita would have said, eres niño bueno.
Bueno, depende del día. Depende del día y la circunstancia, pero, yes.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. And let's do it again, please.
Oh, yeah, whenever. Listen.
With guava and cheese.
Okay, no, espérate. Okay. I'm going to reach out to your assistant. I'm going to give him my number so he can give it to you. So the next time that literally you land in Miami at MIA, we will have them ready for you. How's that? Like,
I love it.
I mean, and that's not, and now it's on the record. So if it doesn't,
it has to happen.
If it doesn't happen, really, when you go back to GMA weekend, the first thing you should do is just say, like, this just in, Pim Pam Pollo is a liar. And that's, call my ass out on national television.
Perfect. You got it.
All right, man. Cuídate.
Oh, likewise, man. Cuídate.